That's it.
Good evening, everyone. A few words about Yerushalayim. The Jewish community in Yerushalayim was non-existent for many, many centuries. The Ramban writes that when he came to Yerushalayim, 1267, he could not find a minyan here. That he had to import people from Shem and Hebron in order that he would have a minyan. He also wrote that the city was completely desolate and that there were many empty buildings and you could take over any building that you wanted. And he describes the building today in the old, it's not the building anymore, but it's the site. So it was a building, he writes, with beautiful pillars, and he made a big Knesset out of it. That was called Beit Knesset Ramban. But after Ramban passed away, so then the Jewish community in Yerushalayim disappeared. And we don't hear anything about it for about 300 years. You have to imagine such a thing. That for 300 years there's no community here. And yet in all of their prayers and thoughts, wherever they were in the diaspora, in the exile, Yerushalayim was a live thing. They were always going back to Yerushalayim. The Nachman of Breslov famously said, every step that I take in life is towards Yerushalayim. So this would bring us to when the Ottoman Empire took over the Middle East. The early 1600s, they took over here in Palestine. And the Ottoman Turks, the city was again still desolate. It never was a major city as long as the Arabs controlled it, it never was a major city. Never had a large population, it never had an economy, ability somehow to function. Because Yerushalayim, the Gemara says, Lomo eino chamei tverio Yerushalayim. Why doesn't Yerushalayim have any natural wonders? Why doesn't it have the hot springs that exist in Tverio? It should have in Yerushalayim. Why doesn't it have mountains? It does, but I mean real mountains. Yerushalayim is on the edge of a desert. The edge of Midbar Yehuda. If you have any doubts today, it should have proved it to you. So what's the attraction? Why Yerushalayim? The Gemara itself answers that that's the very reason. If it had hot springs, if it had the Victoria Falls, so then people wouldn't value Yerushalayim for Yerushalayim. They would value it for all of the other things. And the Torah wanted us to value Yerushalayim for Yerushalayim. Asher b'yomer b'yom ha'u b'har Hashem yeroeh. So this is the place of the Akedah of Yitzchak. According to Midrashim, this is somehow connected to Bethel, where Yaakov Avinu saw the great dream. And this is where the temple stood. And this was the holy place for the Jewish people. But the Jewish people were there, and Yerushalayim didn't function as a major place. Even amongst the Muslims, so in the 7th century, when Islam began, They immediately took over the Temple Mount and they built the mosques that are there. So the Golden Dome, the Mosque of Omar, they don't use that. That's only for decoration. And the other, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is the one that's in use for prayer. But the holy city is Mecca, it's not Jerusalem. And Jerusalem never figured prominently in Islamic writings, even until today. Today it's important because we are here. So it's not a question so much of what I want, it's that I can't give you what you want, which is a human trait. In the after the expulsion from Spain in the 16th century, when the Jews came, so the major Jewish settlement here in the land of Israel was in the north, in the Galilee, Tzfat, Tveria, and Yerushalayim was a backwater. Though there were Rabbonim in Yerushalayim, there was a Kehillah in Yerushalayim, but it was much less in size and in influence than the Kehillot that were in the Galilee. The famous machlokas that existed regarding the renewal of the smicha for the Sanhedrin. So the Rabbonim in Tzfat and the Galilee, Yaakov Beirav and others, Beis Yosef, they supported it. But the Rav in Yerushalayim opposed it. And he said that you can't do it without Yerushalayim. And they never settled that disagreement. And eventually the smicha disappeared by itself, because the smicha that is contested after a while has little value. In the 1700s, Jews started to come again to Yerushalayim, small numbers, mostly Sephardic Jews, Jews from the Near East. And they settled in the walled city, the old city. But Yerushalayim then, in 1750, Yerushalayim had a population of 6,000 people. And it was not until the Napoleon came here, and he came all the way to Akko. There he was defeated, and he withdrew from the Middle East. But he wanted to be the emperor of Jerusalem as well. In the 1800s, there started a movement amongst Ashkenazic Jews as well to come back to Yerushalayim. From 1803 onwards, especially Jews from Lithuania. And we're not talking vast numbers, but we're talking about a constant trickle of Jews coming. And they constituted what later was called the Issue of Ayasha, the old issue, the European Jews. And they had no intent to found a state here, but they wanted to live in Yerushalayim, and they wanted Yerushalayim to have, this sort of religious presence here. So, for instance, Rav Shmuel Samant was the Rav in Yerushalayim for 70 years, from 1839 to 1909. And they had what they did, etc., etc. And Eastern European Jews came here and settled. But the real impetus would not happen until after World War I. Balfour Declaration had been declared, and then the Jews felt. So then it was all types of Jews. It wasn't the religious Jews who came here, but all types of Jews that came. And they're the ones that built Yerushalayim. They built it now outside the walls. Starting in the 1870s already, they built outside the walls. Then you had the Nachlat Shiva, where all the restaurants are. They're still in business. And you had eventually Meir Sharim. They all expanded outwards. And Chavi was founded in the 1920s. And there were all sorts of little villages that had become the neighborhoods of Yerushalayim, because now they're all amalgamated and they run together. And it's one city. But originally they were like little outposts, different. But Yerushalayim was the dream. And people in the exile, their last name was Ish Yerushalmi or Yerushalmsky. And to them, Yerushalayim was real. Now, the imaginary Yerushalayim is much greater than the actual Yerushalayim. It's always like that. So therefore, it could be given over for frustration and disappointment. But the reality is here. But then one thing is for certain is that even 100 years ago, no one imagined that Yerushalayim would be what it is today. No one imagined that it would have a population close to 1 million, that would have the variety of Jewish life that it has, and the physical conditions that it has, and the spirituality that it has. And because of that, that's why the contest for Yerushalayim is so vital and apparently never ending. Because this is not what it's supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to happen. Yoshev Hashemayim Yischok Hashem Yilav Loma. The Lord doesn't do things by our script, by what human beings think should be. And therefore, we're privileged to live in Yerushalayim, and we're privileged to celebrate Yom Yerushalayim. Just want to conclude, tell you an incident that happened in my life that had made a remarkable impression upon me. I was a scholar in residence for the San Diego Jewish community, maybe 35 years ago, 40 years ago. And San Diego was right near the Mexican border. And so I said to my host, you know, I want to go to Mexico, so just to say I was in Tijuana, right? Believe me, there's no reason to go to Tijuana. But to Mexico, on the bucket list, I've been there. So I was coming back from, then the border was, you know, it wasn't a big deal. And you walked across the bridge and you came to the American consul who was sitting there. And he had a big, tall Mexican-American policeman next to him, a real big man. And the policeman said to me, sir, where were you born? So I said, Chicago, Illinois. He said, do you have any identifications? I showed him my driver's license. So I said, American driver's license. He said, sir, where do you live? I said, I live in Jerusalem. He stopped like he was struck. And he said, you are a most fortunate human being. I remember that. Because the Mexican-American policeman, he figured it out. He said, you're a most fortunate human being. So we are. And therefore we should celebrate it and hope for good times, quiet times. Tananya v'Nakash,